The night was cold on the broken colony streets. Dust and smoke hung in the air like a heavy blanket. The market stalls were empty, their lights dimmed, and only the sound of distant machines echoed through the ruins. Among the shadows crawled a girl with skin the color of pale silver, her thin frame trembling. Her leg was gone, replaced by a crude metal stump that made every move painful. She dragged herself forward, one hand on the ground, the other clutching a torn cloth for warmth. No one looked at her. The traders walked past, drunk mercenaries laughed, and families pulled their children close to avoid her. To them, she was nothing, not even worth a glance. She had no home, no family, no future. Her stomach burned with hunger, but no one cared. In this place, broken ones were forgotten, left to fade into the dirt. The girl's name was Arya, but no one had spoken it in months. To the people of the colony, she was just another beggar alien. Her leg had been taken in a factory fire, her family lost in the chaos of war. Since then, every door she knocked on was closed, every plea for help ignored. She had learned to stop asking. Silence was safer than rejection. But tonight her strength was gone. Her arms shook as she dragged herself behind a half-broken wall. Her breath came fast, each inhale sharp with pain. Her vision blurred, and she thought this might be the night she finally disappeared. The galaxy had no place for the weak, and she had been weak too long. Then, footsteps. Heavy, steady, and closer than the rest. Arya froze, her heart racing, afraid it was a slaver or a cruel merchant ready to push her away. But the shadow that fell across her was taller, broader, human. The man wore an old jacket, scarred and patched, his boots heavy from years of travel. His face was rough with lines of war, his eyes tired but not cruel. He stopped. Most never stopped. He looked at her, really looked, and for the first time in months she felt seen. Her silver eyes met his, and she hated herself for hoping. Humans had a name among her people. Dangerous, selfish, fighters who cared only for themselves. She waited for him to pass, or worse, to laugh. Instead, he knelt. His voice was deep but calm. "You shouldn't be here, kid." Arya flinched, pulling the cloth tighter. Her throat was dry, but she forced words out. "Go away." Her voice cracked, weak, like she had forgotten how to speak. The man didn't move, his gaze softening. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small packet of food. The smell hit her like fire. Warm bread, salted meat, the kind she had not tasted since before the war. Her hands shook, torn between pride and hunger. The man placed the packet on the ground, not forcing, not demanding, just leaving it there. "Eat," he said simply, his voice carrying no threat. Arya's chest ached. She didn't trust him, couldn't trust him. Too many times she had been promised help, only to be beaten or thrown back into the street. But her body betrayed her, her hand creeping forward, grabbing the food, stuffing it into her mouth before fear could stop her. Tears burned her eyes as she ate, but the man only watched in silence. Not pity, not disgust, just watching, as if making sure she lived one more night. When she finished, she wiped her mouth with the torn cloth. Her silver eyes narrowed. "Why human?" The man leaned back, his jaw tight, his eyes shadowed by memories. "Because no one else will," he said, almost to himself. His words lingered in the cold night air. And for the first time in months, Arya felt something dangerous, something fragile. Hope. But hope was dangerous. Hope could break her. As she stared at him, she wondered if this was a trap, or the beginning of something she didn't dare dream of. The human stood, offering his hand, his figure strong against the ruined colony lights. "Come with me," he said. And though her heart screamed not to trust, her soul whispered she could not stay here. The night waited, heavy and cold, and the choice hung between life and death. Arya's hand trembled, but she reached forward, not knowing if she had just found safety or stepped into a new danger. Arya's hand hovered in the air, her silver fingers trembling. She wanted to trust, but every memory screamed that trust was death. The human's hand was strong, scarred, steady, waiting, not forcing, not demanding, only there. Her chest rose and fell fast, and finally, with a shaking breath, she touched his palm. It was warm, warmer than she remembered warmth could be. He pulled her up carefully, not yanking, not careless, but slow as if he understood how fragile she was. Her weight pressed into him, and she hated how weak she felt. Her metal stump dragged across the cracked street, scraping against stone. The sound made her flinch, made her ashamed, but he didn't show disgust. He shifted his arm to support her better, his voice calm. "I've got you." Arya wanted to ask who he was, why he was doing this, but her throat refused. The man led her through narrow alleys, past flickering signs and broken lamps. People stared but quickly turned away when they saw his eyes. He was human, and humans carried a presence of danger. Most didn't want trouble. Arya noticed the way his hand sometimes brushed the old weapon strapped to his side. He was no merchant, no drunk wanderer. He was something else, something harder. At last, they reached a rusted door tucked between two silent shops. The human pushed it open with his shoulder, the hinges groaning. Inside was a small room lit by a single lamp, a table with broken legs, and a simple bed pressed against the wall. It smelled of oil, dust, and something faintly clean. It was not rich, not bright, but compared to the streets, it was a palace. He helped her onto the bed, his movements careful. Arya tensed, ready for the moment when the kindness ended, when he would reveal the cost. But he stepped back, pulling off his jacket and tossing it on the chair. "Rest," he said, his voice low, steady. Her silver eyes narrowed. "Why? What do you want?" The human met her gaze without flinching. "Nothing." The word felt like a lie. It had to be. Arya pulled the cloth tighter around herself, her voice breaking. Humans always want something. The man's jaw tightened, but his eyes softened. "My name is Daniel," he said after a pause, "and I'm not like the others." He pulled a small container from his pack and slid it across the table toward her. Water, clean, fresh. She snatched it, her lips trembling as she drank. For the first time, she felt the tight grip in her chest loosen. But then fear struck again, sharp and cold. If she stayed, what if he sold her? What if he betrayed her like the others? Her heart was a war between hunger for safety and fear of chains. She wanted to run, but her body could not move. Too weak, too broken. Daniel watched her quietly, his gaze not sharp, not judging, just heavy with something she couldn't name. After a long silence, he spoke. "You think I'll hurt you, don't you?" Arya froze, her throat dry. She didn't answer. He sighed, leaning against the wall. "I can't change your mind with words." His eyes shifted, and for a moment she saw something there. Pain, deep and hidden. It was not the look of a predator, but of someone who had carried too much weight for too long. The room felt heavier, the silence thick. Arya shifted on the bed, her eyes narrowing. "Then why help me?" Daniel's answer came slow, his voice tired. "Because once, I was like you." Her breath caught, confused, unsure if he meant hunger, war, or something else. He didn't explain further, and the mystery gnawed at her like a wound. What had happened to him? What had broken a soldier so hard that he could see her? Her body sagged against the pillow, exhaustion pulling her down. She didn't want to close her eyes, didn't want to sleep in a stranger's room. But warmth spread across her chest, heavy and soft, and her eyelids betrayed her. The last thing she saw was Daniel sitting near the door, his hand resting on his weapon, guarding, not sleeping, as if he had taken her life as his responsibility. The thought made her heart twist with something dangerous again, hope. But even as sleep claimed her, doubt whispered in her ears. What if tomorrow he was gone? What if tomorrow he gave her away? The galaxy was cruel, and kindness was a rare lie. Yet something deep inside, small and stubborn, told her that maybe this time it was different. Maybe this time, she had found more than a stranger in the dark. Morning crept into the small room through the cracks in the broken shutters. Dust floated in the light like tiny stars, and the sound of engines outside reminded Arya she was still in the ruined colony. Her eyes opened slowly, her body stiff, her stomach aching but not as hollow as before. For a moment she forgot where she was. Then memory struck. The human, the food, the bed, the strange safety. She turned her head and froze. Daniel was still there, sitting on the chair near the door, his weapon resting across his lap. He hadn't slept, his eyes were shadowed, but his body was alert. It was as if he had stood guard the entire night. Arya's first thought was suspicion. No one stayed without wanting something. No one gave without taking. She sat up, her thin arms shaking, her cloth slipping from her shoulders. The human turned his head, noticing, but he didn't stare, didn't leer. He only said, You should eat again. He slid another small packet across the table. Her stomach growled, but she forced herself to glare. Why do you care if I live or die? Daniel's eyes narrowed, his voice low. Because too many already don't. The words caught her off guard. She wanted to believe they meant nothing, but they pressed against her like a truth too heavy to ignore. Slowly she reached for the food, eating with quick, messy bites. The human said nothing, letting her eat, letting her decide what she believed. When she finished, silence filled the room again. Arya pulled the blanket tighter, her voice bitter. You're waiting, aren't you? Waiting for me to trust you so you can sell me. Daniel's jaw tightened, his gaze steady. If I wanted to sell you, I would have left you in the street. Her chest tightened. The logic stung, but fear still burned. Then why? She whispered. No one does this. He looked at her, really looked, and his eyes were full of something strange, recognition. Arya's fingers curled around the edge of the blanket, her thoughts racing. Trust was a knife, sharp enough to cut both ways. But her body betrayed her again. She didn't feel hunted here. She didn't feel invisible. She felt seen, and that was more terrifying than any blade. Daniel finally spoke again, his voice softer. I know what it's like to be broken. He lifted his trousers, pulling the fabric higher. Arya's silver eyes widened. His leg ended just below the knee, replaced with a worn mechanical prosthetic. It was old, scratched, and clearly painful. She stared, words locked in her throat. He gave a humorless smile. War took it. War took everything, and I thought I had no place left in the galaxy. For the first time, she saw him not as a strong soldier, but as something else, like her, broken, abandoned, surviving. Her chest ached, her throat dry, and she whispered before she could stop herself, and now. Daniel leaned back, his gaze fixed on the ceiling. Now I find reasons to keep walking, even if they're small. Silence stretched between them. Arya wanted to scream, to run, but also to stay, the confusion tearing at her. She had been taught that humans were cruel, selfish, dangerous. Yet here he was, showing his weakness to her, a stranger. Her heart pounded, the lines between truth and lie blurring. The moment was broken by a sharp knock at the door. Arya flinched, panic rushing through her veins. Daniel's hand went instantly to his weapon, his body tense, his voice low. Stay quiet. Another knock, harder this time. Then a voice, rough and greedy. We heard you took something in. Daniel, hand it over. Arya's blood ran cold. She knew that voice. It belonged to one of the slavers who had chased her before. Fear wrapped around her chest like chains. She whispered, they'll take me, they'll kill me. Daniel turned his head, his jaw set, his voice like stone. Not while I'm here. He stood, the weight of his presence filling the small room, his weapon ready. Arya's heart hammered, caught between terror and something she didn't understand, trust. For the first time, she wondered if maybe this human truly meant what he said. But outside the door, the shadows of the slavers waited, hungry and cruel. And Arya knew that fragile hope could be shattered with one wrong move. The pounding on the door grew louder, the wood rattling against the hinges. Arya's body curled tighter on the bed, every muscle shaking, her silver eyes wide with terror. The voices outside were sharp and mocking. We know you've got her, Daniel. Broken little alien isn't worth much, but she's still ours. Her breath hitched. She could already feel the chains around her wrists, hear the laughter of the slavers as they dragged her back. Daniel's face was carved from stone. He stood firm by the door, his weapon raised, but his voice was calm, almost too calm. You're not taking her. The silence that followed was heavy. Then cruel laughter broke through. You can't stop us. Old soldier, you're nothing now. Arya's heart pounded, her voice breaking. They'll kill you. They always kill for less. Daniel glanced at her, his eyes steady. Then they'll have to try. She shook her head, her chest tight. Why risk your life for me? I'm nothing. I'm broken. His grip tightened on the weapon, his voice rough. So am I. The words cut through her fear like a blade. Daniel's gaze met hers, and in that moment, she saw it. Not pity, not charity, but truth. He wasn't saving her because she was special. He was saving her because he knew her pain, because once he had been where she was. The slavers pounded again, the door groaning under the force, but Arya's mind was spinning. Why did he care? Why did he see her when no one else did? Daniel's voice softened. Just for her. You think you're nothing because you lost a piece of yourself, but you're wrong. He lifted his prosthetic leg, tapping the metal against the floor with a dull clang. This didn't make me useless. It made me understand what it means to fight for something. Arya stared, her throat burning. And what do I have to fight for? Daniel's answer was quiet, steady. Yourself. The banging stopped, silence pressing against the walls. Daniel didn't lower his weapon, his eyes fixed on the door. Arya's breath was shallow, fear still gnawing, but Daniel's words stayed in her chest, glowing faint like a spark. No one had ever told her she was worth fighting for. Not her people, not the colony, not anyone. Only this human, broken like her, standing between her and death. The silence shattered as the slavers slammed into the door with full force, wood splintering. Arya cried out, covering her ears, her body trembling. Daniel didn't move, his voice sharp now, cutting through her panic. Arya, listen to me. Her eyes shot to him, wide and terrified. You survived this long, he said. Don't let them make you believe you're weak. You're stronger than you know. The door cracked, the slavers' laughter growing louder, closer. Arya's chest tightened, her breath quick. She wanted to believe him, but the fear was heavy. Still, his words clung to her like chains of a different kind. Not chains of slavery, but of hope, fragile and dangerous. She whispered, trembling, You'll die for me. Daniel gave a grim smile, his eyes fierce. Better to die standing than watch them take another. The door finally burst open, shards of wood scattering across the floor. The slavers stepped in, armed, grinning, their eyes locking on Arya like predators spotting prey. She froze, her body refusing to move, but Daniel stepped forward, blocking their path. His voice was iron. You'll have to go through me. The room crackled with tension, every breath sharp, every second stretched thin. Arya felt her heart slam against her chest, her voice a broken whisper. Why do you care so much? Daniel didn't look back, his voice low but strong. Because someone should have cared for me, and no one did. His words struck her like lightning, deep and raw. For the first time, she saw not a soldier, not a savior, but a man scarred by the same cruelty that had broken her. The slavers laughed, raising their weapons, mocking. But Arya's fear twisted into something else. Anger, small but burning. She had been nothing for so long, forgotten, discarded, but this human's words planted a dangerous thought. Maybe she wasn't nothing. Maybe she still had a future. Her fingers curled into the blanket, her silver eyes hardening as the first shot fired. The battle had begun, and fragile trust was all they had. The first blast scorched the wall above Daniel's head, plaster and sparks raining down. Arya cried out, pressing herself into the corner of the bed, her hands gripping the blanket so tight her knuckles turned white. The slavers stepped into the small room, 3 of them, their eyes sharp with greed, their mouths curled into cruel grins. Move aside, human, one barked, his weapon trained on Daniel. The girl belongs to us. Daniel didn't move, his shoulders squared, his weapon steady in his hands. She belongs to no one. His voice was low, rough, the tone of a man who had spoken such words before. The slavers laughed, circling like wolves. You think you can fight us, old soldier? You can barely stand on that broken leg. Arya's silver eyes flicked between them, terror clawing at her chest. Every instinct screamed to run, but there was nowhere to go. The room was too small, the door blocked by shadows. Her breath came fast, her body frozen. The chains of her past felt heavy again. Slavery, pain, the endless truth that no one ever came to save her. But now, here was this human, scarred, broken, standing between her and the nightmare that had followed her into the room. The slavers moved closer, their boots thudding against the cracked floor. Daniel adjusted his stance, his voice sharp. Last warning, walk away. The leader sneered. You can't protect her, not forever. She's worth more credits than you'll ever see again. Daniel's eyes darkened, his grip tightening. Then I'll die broke. The second blast came, this time aimed for him. Daniel rolled to the side, the shot slicing across his shoulder, burning through his jacket. He grunted, but didn't fall. His weapon fired in reply, the echo shaking the tiny room. One slaver staggered back, hit in the arm, his scream filling the air. Arya gasped, her heart hammering. This was madness. He was outnumbered, outgunned, already wounded, and yet he stood. Her chest burned, guilt pressing harder than fear. He was fighting for her, and she was doing nothing, nothing but trembling in the shadows. The leader snarled, raising his weapon again. Enough games, take the girl. Another slaver moved forward, reaching for Arya, his hand rough, his grin wide. She shrank back, a broken cry spilling from her lips, but before he touched her, Daniel's voice cut through the chaos. You lay a hand on her, and you won't live to regret it. The words were not shouted, not screamed, but they struck like iron. For a heartbeat, the slaver hesitated, the human's fire making him pause. Arya stared at Daniel, her chest tight. Why? Why did he care so much? Why fight when the galaxy itself had decided she was worthless? Her eyes flicked to his leg, the worn prosthetic gleaming in the lamplight. He was broken like her, scarred like her, yet he still stood tall, still refused to bend. A fire lit inside her chest, small but fierce. Maybe she wasn't as powerless as she thought. Her gaze shifted to the table where Daniel's pack sat half open, tools and scraps of metal spilling out. Her fingers twitched, her mind racing. She knew machines, had grown up around them, had helped her family repair engines before everything was lost. If she could reach the pack, maybe she could do something. Maybe she could matter. Another shot tore across the room, splintering the chair. Daniel fired back, his face tight with pain, but he didn't fall. Arya slid off the bed, dragging herself across the floor, the cold biting into her hands. The slavers were too focused on him to notice her crawling toward the pack. Her hand reached inside, grabbing the first thing her fingers touched, a small flash charge, half-built, unstable. Her heart raced, her mind screaming that she could make it work. The memory of her father teaching her to twist wires, to balance power, to improvise in the chaos of war filled her thoughts. She worked fast, her hands trembling, sparks biting at her skin. Daniel caught sight of her, his eyes widening, but he didn't stop her. He only gave a short nod, as if to say, "You're stronger than you think." Her chest tightened, fear battling courage, but she pressed the final wire in place. The charge whined alive, light pulsing faint in her hands. The leader snarled, stepping forward. Enough of this. Kill the human and drag her out. Arya's voice cracked as she shouted, "No." The slavers turned, surprise flashing across their faces. She hurled the flash charge across the room, the device sparking against the floor before bursting with a blinding light. The room exploded with brilliance, shadows twisting, slavers crying out, blinded, stumbling. Daniel didn't waste a second. He fired, sharp and precise, his shots striking true. The room filled with screams and smoke, the battle short but brutal. When silence finally fell, the only ones left standing were Daniel and Arya. Her hands shook, her chest heaving, the burnt smell of metal stinging her nose. She had done it. She had helped. She had mattered. Daniel lowered his weapon, his gaze locking on her, fierce but proud. "You saved us," he said, voice rough. Her eyes burned with tears, her whisper broken. "No, you did." But deep inside, she knew the truth. This time, she hadn't been just a burden. This time, she had fought, and Daniel had given her the courage to believe she could. Outside, more shadows stirred in the streets, the threat not yet ended. But in that moment, fragile hope burned brighter than fear. The smoke still hung heavy in the room, the faint glow of the flash charge dying on the floor. Daniel's chest rose and fell, sweat dripping down his brow, his shoulder bleeding where the shot had grazed him. Arya sat on the ground, her hands trembling, the echo of the blast still ringing in her ears. For a moment, silence wrapped around them, fragile and strange. Then, voices outside, more footsteps, heavier this time. The slavers had not come alone. The first group was only the beginning. Arya's stomach twisted, her silver eyes wide. More are coming. Daniel reloaded his weapon, his jaw tight, his voice sharp. "Then we finish this." She shook her head, fear crashing into her chest. "You can't. There are too many. They'll kill you. They'll kill us both." He looked at her, steady, unshaken. "Then we make them pay for every step they take toward you." The words burned into her, fierce and unyielding. No one had ever spoken like that for her sake. No one had ever stood for her. The doorframe groaned, Shadows moving outside, voices barking orders, the slavers preparing to storm in. Daniel crouched low, his prosthetic leg creaking but holding firm. His eyes met hers. Arya, listen, you're not weak. Not anymore. You proved that when you blinded them. Her throat tightened. She wanted to believe him, wanted to be strong, but doubt gnawed at her. Her voice cracked. I can't fight like you. I'm broken. Daniel shook his head, his voice firm. Broken doesn't mean useless. It means dangerous. It means we've already survived what should have killed us, and that makes us harder to break again. The words struck deep, a fire flickering inside her chest. She looked at her hands, still blackened with sparks, and for the first time in years, she wondered if she could be more than a victim. The door burst open, more slavers pouring in, their weapons raised, their eyes gleaming with greed. Daniel fired first, his shots sharp and controlled, forcing them back. Arya scrambled to the table, grabbing more scraps from the pack, her mind racing, her fingers moving fast. She had no full tools, no proper parts, but she had memory, skill, and desperation. She twisted wires, connected circuits, her breath fast, building something that might save them. One slaver rushed forward, blade raised, but Arya shouted, Daniel, left. He turned sharply, firing, the man collapsing before his blade reached. Daniel gave her the briefest glance, the faintest nod, as if to say you see it, you matter. Her chest swelled with something fierce, purpose. But the numbers grew, more boots thundered on the floor outside. Daniel fought like a man with nothing left to lose, every shot precise, every move filled with steel. Yet Arya could see it, the weight in his shoulders, the strain in his leg, he couldn't hold forever. Her heart pounded, fear mixing with determination. She finished her device, small and unstable, a cluster of sparking energy cells bound together. Cover me, she whispered, her voice shaking but strong. Daniel didn't question. He simply shifted his fire, holding back the flood for a few more seconds. Arya dragged herself to the doorway, clutching the device, her breath sharp, her body weak, but her spirit unbroken. The slavers sneered when they saw her. There she is, the cripple, not worth the trouble. But she didn't shrink, not this time. Her voice cracked, but her words carried fire. I am not yours. She hurled the device down the corridor, the cell sparking, whining louder and louder. The explosion tore through the hallway, light and fire filling the air, screams echoing as the slavers scattered. The shockwave rattled the walls, smoke curling into the room. Daniel pulled her back, shielding her from the blast, his arm tight around her. When the noise faded, silence returned, broken only by the hiss of burning wires. Arya's chest heaved, her body weak, but inside she felt something powerful. She had stood, she had fought, she had changed the tide. Daniel looked at her, his eyes fierce but filled with pride. You did that. Her lips trembled, tears burning in her eyes. I thought I was nothing. He shook his head, his voice firm. You're alive, Arya, and that makes you everything. But the fight wasn't over, not yet. Through the smoke, more figures moved, stronger, more armed. The slavers weren't giving up. They wanted her too much, the credits too heavy to walk away from. Daniel's jaw set, his voice grim. They'll keep coming, until one of us falls. Arya swallowed hard, her fear battling against the spark of courage he had lit inside her. For the first time, she wasn't sure if she was only surviving anymore. Maybe she was fighting for something bigger. Hope, shelter, and the human who refused to let her die. The corridor still burned with smoke, the cries of the wounded slavers echoing into the distance. But through the haze more shadows gathered, stronger, heavier, armored. Arya's breath hitched, her silver eyes wide. They won't stop. Daniel, they'll keep coming until they tear us apart. Daniel steadied his weapon, his face pale from blood loss, his voice low and steady. Then we make this our last stand. The words struck her chest like a hammer. She had lived her whole life running, hiding, surviving scraps while the galaxy spat on her. But now, here was one human ready to give his life for her, someone who had no reason to care. Her throat burned, her voice trembling. Why me? I'm nothing to you. Daniel's gaze locked on hers, fierce and raw. Because I know what it's like to be nothing, and I won't let you believe that lie again. Her tears spilled, hot, and angry, but they were not only from fear. Something inside her, fragile but bright, refused to die. She wiped her eyes, her voice breaking but strong. "Then we fight together." Daniel gave a grim nod, his jaw tight. "Together." The slavers surged forward, boots pounding, weapons raised, shouting curses. Daniel opened fire, sharp, controlled, his shots cutting through the first line. Arya dragged herself to the table, her hands moving fast, grabbing scraps, wires, anything she could twist into another trap. Her body was weak, her leg gone, but her mind burned bright. She was no longer only surviving. She was creating weapons of her own. A grenade rolled toward them, its light blinking. Daniel kicked it back down the hall, the blast tearing through the attackers with fire and screams. But more came, shadows unending, greed pushing them into the flames. Arya hurled another makeshift charge, the flash bursting, blinding their advance. Every second was borrowed, but every second meant survival. Daniel fought like a man with nothing left but duty, his body shaking but his spirit unbroken. Each shot he fired was another promise, that she would not be taken, not while he still breathed. Arya's heart pounded, her hands trembling, but she kept moving, kept building, kept fighting. She wasn't a broken girl anymore. She wasn't forgotten. She was standing, side by side with him, even if her legs betrayed her. The slavers shouted in anger, realizing this fight would cost them more than they wanted to pay. One of them, the leader, stepped forward, his armor cracked, his voice full of venom. "She's not worth dying for, human." Daniel's voice thundered back, sharp and full of fire. "Then you'll never understand what makes her worth living for." The words cut the air like lightning. Arya's chest tightened, her tears mixing with a fierce smile. No one had ever spoken for her like that. No one had ever given her back her worth. In that moment, no matter what happened, she knew she was not alone anymore. The final clash came fast, brutal. Daniel fired until his weapon clicked empty, then swung it like a club. Arya hurled her last device, sparks tearing across the corridor, walls shattering, slavers falling back into the smoke. The survivors fled, cursing, broken, beaten, their shadows melting into the ruins outside. Silence, heavy and endless, filled the room. Daniel collapsed against the wall, his chest heaving, blood staining his jacket. Arya dragged herself to him, her hands shaking, pressing against his wound. Her voice panicked. "Stay with me. Don't you dare leave me now." He gave a weak smile, his eyes heavy but warm. "You're safe now, that's enough." She shook her head, her tears fierce. "No, I'm not safe without you." He chuckled, low and broken, stubborn. Then his hand found hers, gripping tight. The warmth of his palm steadied her, even as fear clawed her heart. She leaned closer, her voice soft but fierce. "You gave me shelter when no one else would. You gave me hope when I thought I was already gone. So don't you dare die now. Not when we finally found each other." For a long moment, the only sound was their breathing, ragged and slow. Then Daniel's eyes closed, not in death but in exhaustion, his grip still holding hers, strong even in weakness. Arya pressed her forehead against his hand, her chest heavy but filled with something new. She had been nothing, broken, forgotten, but now she had a future. A future because one human had seen her worth when no one else did. Outside, the colony was still broken, the galaxy still cruel. But in that small room, among the ruins and ashes, something had been born that the slavers could never kill. Hope, fragile but alive. Shelter found not in walls but in each other. Arya held his hand tighter, her voice a whisper meant only for him. "I'm not nothing anymore, because of you." And in the silence that followed, the galaxy felt a little less dark.